Welcome, everybody, to the Monday Night Tours. I am your guy, Josh Kaiser, and I am joined today by Josh Haddix.
How's it going, everybody?
And Kyle Hoagland.
Hey. What's up, everybody?
How's it feel? We're back here on episode 2, discussing September 11th, 1995, the first real head-to-head matchup of Nitro and Raw. And I gotta say, it's good to be back. And Eric Bischoff has already acknowledged this podcast, so I'd like to say that we're the Big Boys podcast.
Dude, that's kind of crazy, man. I was shocked when you sent that.
And then, then a couple minutes later, he then puts his own tweet out there with basically what we already said.
Yeah, Bischoff totally ripping us off. But I guess we're literally making a podcast about a show that he created, so we'll throw him a bone here.
Yeah, we'll let it go. And he gave us one extra follower, so thanks.
Thank you, Eric, for that. And let's just get right into it, and we'll start with Mr. Bischoff's show, Monday Nitro, live yet again from Miami, Florida. Of course, they're going to be pretty much live every week, so this is going to be the standard for them. Big difference from the first week, which was in the Mall of America. Here we're in a normal arena. And this, it opens up at the three-man booth. Of course, no Pepe again. I'm kind of keeping a track of Pepe, so this would be a common theme throughout our show, is when Pepe shows up and when he isn't. And currently he is not there. And you still have the same three-man group from last week with Heenan, I almost said Shivani, Bischoff, and Mongo. And, of course, this is the set I was used to with Nitro, the big stainless steel sort of look with the colored disco lights kind of feel. And I know, Hoagie, you were kind of a Nitro fan. This is pretty much what you remember for the Nitro set, right?
Yeah, but before they went like totally modern later. But yes, this was definitely the production value that I was used to. You know, Sands Mall of America, and I've always liked it. It always seemed very industrial. It seemed like they used a lot of. It seemed like they took the stuff from like WWE's like steel steps and just created the whole set made out of that. But overall, I mean, I've loved the set. That must
weigh tons, like hundreds of tons, if they make it from the same material that those steps are made out of, right?
I one day want to go backstage, like go to like a pay-per-view and see if I can pick up the steps myself.
Hey, only Big Show can do that, right?
This is true.
Haddix, how about you? This is your first real look into the Nitro set. What were your thoughts?
There wasn't really anything. I don't want to say there was nothing different, because obviously it's different, but I guess I didn't notice it. The only thing I kept noticing, even going back to last week, was, well, not last week because it was, in the mall, but the ramp was really short. And I thought last week the ring looked really small, but there was no Raw to compare to. So I was like, oh, maybe that happens later, that they just increase the size of the rings. But the Raw ring was definitely a lot bigger. I mean, so those are really the only things I really noticed. But as far as the setting goes, I guess I just didn't really pay attention to it much.
How about...
So you notice like the very beginning that had like all the metal with the WCW logo, that very beginning part. Not just it's at the ramp, but it's like before there was nothing.
I understand that was. I guess I just never really like pay much attention to it or think much about it.
What about the announcers? I mean, this is something you see now with the commentary, like on current product, but Nitro was notorious for having their announcers sit like way away from ringside, where typically Raw and the WWF had, the announcers table right there. So, what any thoughts that?
I actually didn't. I know they do that, but I actually didn't even notice it. Maybe I was just wasn't really paying much attention. I don't like that. I think I like it better when they're ringside. But again, didn't really cross my mind while I was watching.
No, fair enough. Okay, so moving into the show itself, we open up with a recap of Luger and Hogan from last week. Of course, Luger being the surprise appearance in that first Nitro, setting up for tonight's main event for the World Championship. And then they kind of throw out the name of Vader, who went AWOL, didn't sign his papers, they said, and they're going to need a fourth spot now for this Team Hogan at the upcoming Fall Brawl War Games. Just kind of interesting. I think Vader is actually out of WCW at this point, and they kind of use that as a loose story. I do think this is about the time he heads over to WWF. I'm not positive on that, but
I'm near certain you're right. It's just very weird that he is he is one of the 4 or 5 people on the intro video of Nitro.
He is. That's a great point. I forgot about that, but you're right. So we'll have to see if he shows up here in a couple of weeks, or if, in fact, he does make that transition to Raw and WWF in the future. That said, we go to our opening match. This is Sabu, who, of course, they had the crazy promo package from the previous Nitro last week, pumping him up. Going up against Das Wonder Kid, Alex Wright. Haddix, for somebody who has not probably seen either of these two wrestlers in action, what was your initial thoughts just seeing the two of them?
I mean, I guess Alex Wright has that kind of that physique of a wrestler. You know what I mean? Sabu kind of looks like, kind of that random guy that they bring in. I have heard the name Sabu. I've never heard of Alex Wright, but I've never seen either of them wrestle. So I really thought this was going to be kind of a jobber match going in. Well,
just a little spoiler alert, strap in because you're going to get plenty of Alex Wright coming in the near future for you.
Well, there you go.
For me, though, I kind of wanted to be the one to break this match down. This is typical of what we talked about with WCW, opening up with that fast-paced, high-action, in many ways they have luchador matches in the future, but this is a little bit different because I wouldn't say Alex Wright and Sabu are luchadors, but they're definitely, Sabu is a high flyer for sure. And of course, he's coming from ECW, so he kind of demonstrates that hardcore aspect. For instance, he unfolds a chair on the outside and kind of runs and jumps off of it. It kind of takes a nasty spill into the guardrail when Alex Wright moves. And for me, I always thought I hated Alex Wright as a performer, but I was really impressed with him in this match. I thought he had a fantastic drop kick. He did it twice. He did a standing drop kick, and then he did this top rope missile drop kick where I thought he got about 20 feet in the air. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I thought it was a really high drop kick. And for me, the biggest downer is probably the way Sabu wins the match. He does a reverse Hurricanrana kind of move, and it's sort of a slight awkward cradle pin kind of thing to Alex Wright. But he does pick up the 3 count and then proceeds to turn, in case you were cheering him on or whatever, you weren't sure if he's going to be a heel or face. He definitely pulls the full heel when he brings a table to the outside, which I got to laugh at the old wooden tables that they have at this point in wrestling. And he lays Alex Wright on it, and then he does a dive spear off the top to the outside and spears him through it. And this to me is the best part of the entire match. They reverse the decision then at this point and award Alex Wright the win after this. Have you guys ever seen that where they reverse a decision after the match because of I've seen it before where you're holding a submission and they tap out and then you don't break it and then they kind of do that, but this was 2 minutes after the decision was made and he spears him through. I don't know, I just thought that was funny. So they give Alex Wright the win, but I just thought that was entertaining. For me, this is match of the night for me. I thought it was actually really well done, and I'm going to give it 3 stars. What about you guys?
I can agree with that. I'll give it 3 stars. I actually really enjoyed it. It definitely had that kind of hardcore feel to it, so I'd also give it a 3-star.
It was a good pace. Like I say, we see a lot of the opening belts come and doing that. I can't give it 3 stars just because the finish is very important to me. If you botch the finish, then I feel like that loses a star. So I would say maybe 2.5. And also, this was Sabu's debut match, and the match was made both debuting a wrestler and the young talent and Alex Wright, and they both didn't look really that good at the end of it. I understand that Sabu got the match kind of overturned only because they're also kind of pushing Alex Wright. So I actually was expecting, I guess, and he's kind of right because Sabu's debuting, so he wins. But then you've got Alex Wright, who actually at this point I think has only had 1 loss, and he just got done beating DDP recently. So
yeah, they did mention that.
So it just wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense. And you'll start seeing a lot of this where it's just why do people lose at these weird times? Usually everything kind of crescendos. or moves up and then crescendos, but at this point it was kind of awkward. So I'll give it, because of the fact that the booking was kind of weird. The match was good, but I think the finish kind of dulls it out. So I give it about 2.5.
All right. That said, we move into a Ric Flair promo, and this is becoming a standard for Nitro. You got Mean Gene in the ring, getting ready to do his in-ring interview with Ric Flair, and I feel like this is basically a staple for Nitro for the next 6 years. But it's sort of a weird promo because first he starts talking about Arn Anderson and how him and Arn were buddies and they used to run wild, and normally they would run wild in Miami together. But then Lex Luger shows up, and I got to ask you guys, Luger walks up and Flair starts calling him the total package, gives, talks about how tall he is, how big his biceps are, the whole thing. Luger says, "You're too much," shakes his head, and leaves. Flair then proceeds to say he's picking Luger to win the match tonight. And that's it. Like, what the hell was that all about? Does it make any sense to either of you guys?
I thought they were going to start like a feud. Like, I don't know if he was going to interfere in his like little promo or whatever. But yeah, literally just said, and then that was like it. And I'm like, God, I really hope this leads somewhere later because that was just random as hell.
The only reason why I can think this made sense is because this was Luger's one only shot to be on TV before the match. Maybe they just didn't have anything else for him, and they're going to talk about Hogan. And I don't remember now for the life of me if we even see Hogan before the match at all. I assume we do. It's Hogan. But yeah, it was just I do disagree with you, Hags. I don't think at this point Flair is still a heel in a sense. He still doesn't like Hogan. Luger comes in, talking shit and, challenging Hogan. So I think for that, Flair's going to side with somebody that's not Hogan. So right now, even though Luger's probably more of a face right now than anything, he's still going to take the side of the new guy who's trying to usurp Hulkamania. Yeah,
I just thought it was very bizarre. They didn't. Luger says says that you're too much, leaves. Was very strange.
Oh, he didn't need to be there at all.
No,
he totally didn't need to be there.
He didn't. It was very weird, but
give him his own short interview. That didn't need to happen.
Right, I agree. That said, we're going to move into our United States Championship match. We got the Stinger defending his title against Mr. Wallstreet. I mean, Michael Wallstreet. No, I take that back. It's now VK Wallstreet. You can see WCW really has their shit together at this point. They already have called.
He has more name changes than matches.
Yeah. So of course the VK Vincent Kennedy. I don't know, Haddix, if you picked up on the subtleties there that they were trying again.
I did not until you wrote it down because I had no idea what VK meant.
Yeah. So that's what the Vincent Kennedy. Again, there are a lot of cracks they're trying to dig at the WWF, at Vince, the whole ordeal. And actually, it's at this point during this match that Bischoff says, "Don't bother switching channels." The Raw, of course, is 2 or 3 weeks old because it is taped, unlike this live Nitro. And he says Shawn Michaels beats the big guy with the super kick. He couldn't get a green belt with at a local Y. We'll come back to that quote when we break down Raw, but he's spoiling the ending to the Raw. We talked about this. This is something Bischoff's going to do going forward, and WCW is going to do. They're going to spoil a lot of endings of these taped Raws. And, do you guys... do you have a problem with him spoiling it? Would you have a problem today if that happened? Do you just treat it as it's business is business?
I think it's business is business. It's kind of ruthless, but it worked. And we'll find out later that there are points where it really backfired. But I think at this point, it was fine to do. And if you're trying to keep people from changing the channel, saying, hey, don't worry about it. If you're really – because what he's trying to bet on is that no one's watching WWF for the quality of the matches. They're just there to find out if their favorite wrestler won or not. And he's basically saying, don't worry about it. Your favorite wrestler, Shawn Michaels, the most popular guy on the card. He won the match. He didn't spoil anything else. He just gave the main event, the main draw for the company, and just said, don't worry about it. He beat Sid. Don't worry. We're good. You can just stay here and watch the live show.
How was Bischoff finding out?
I mean, these were taped shows. They're all over. If you read any dirt sheets and stuff, I know the internet wasn't a big deal, but like I could have found out the results at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that hard. It wasn't secretive. Gotcha. It was literally taped weeks before. So it is.
They can also easily get people to go to the show. You know, they can have some WCW actually go to the show and watch
they don't really. Yeah, but they didn't have to do that. That said, so then Mongo makes the comment again, digging at Raw, saying we aren't uncooked eggs. Good one, by the way, Mongo. Really got him.
Heyo.
Says we sizzle here. And then Mongo, for some reason, starts to bury football and talk about how wrestling is where it's at, which is weird because he's got a background in football. I don't know. Mongo makes no sense. It's just going to be my continued rant against him. That said, Hoagie, why don't you give a quick breakdown of this match?
So I don't think anyone of the three of us probably thought that VK Wallstreet was going to beat Sting, unless you were just thinking because he had a vignette, or some sort of like promo vid last week to think that he was going to show up. I'm kind of sad that he got jobbed as bad as he did, even with a company guy like Sting. But it was a 4-minute squash match. VK got a couple of elbows in. I mean, Sting didn't even use like a signature move in this whole thing. I think he did one stinger splash, did a crossbody off the top rope. That was the pin. No Scorpion Deathlock, no Scorpion Death Drop, no nothing. Just a standard, old-fashioned crossbody off the top. And I also find it very funny that I think Keenan and Mongo were just bouncing back and forth all the puns they could come up with regarding money at VK's expense.
Puns. Yeah.
It was some were good, some of them were all right. I was okay with it because there was nothing else really that was entertaining about that match. But overall, I'm not surprised that Sting won. Once again, this was also the title. This was for the title. So no, we're not going to change hands of that. But I was kind of surprised at first at how one-sided it was, just because they did promote IRS VK Wallstreet a little bit last week. They let him know, hey, he's
here.
He had a
promo.
He wants, It was enough to have a promo. But I think with the fact they changed his name to VK Wallstreet, they're doing the dig that he used to be in WWF, and I think they wanted to really hit home that this guy left WWF, where playing with a bunch of kids, he wants to come here and play with the big boys, and here he is playing with the big boys, and he got squashed. So what that's supposed to do is tell a message to the viewers and say, why would you watch WWF where this guy was somewhat successful and watch like just subpar talent? The talent they have is killing the talent at WWF. So I think that there was actually a method to the squash.
That makes sense. That said, what do you rate this match? I
mean, a 1.5. I mean, there was no signature move. It didn't show Wallstreet's whatever talent you thought he had. You didn't see it. So yeah, it was all one-sided offense, and we didn't even get to see any nice pops or high impact moves. So I give it like a 1.5.
Yeah, I have a 1.5 as well. Basically my note said Sting wins with a crossbody, and the rest of it's just talking about the lead up into the match. Haddix, how about you?
Oh yeah, 1. I could have told you Sting was going to win, and the match did nothing for me.
All right. That said, we move on to the WCW Saturday Night promo. Biggest news here: Disco Inferno's making his debut. So, Haddix, are you familiar with Disco Inferno?
No idea who that is.
All right. Well, just like Alex Wright, you get ready to be entertained. He'll be coming soon. And then Big Bubba's fighting Dave Sullivan. The only thing notorious here, or worth mentioning, I should say here, Dave Sullivan has a rabbit in the promo. I know nothing more about that than Dave Sullivan has a rabbit, so I thought that was worth mentioning.
Yeah, the only reason why I think that the rabbit's there too, or it's supposed to be interesting, is that Big Bubba is allergic to rabbits. So they
is that like in kayfabe, or is that like real?
I have no idea. I think that was just to give Big Bubba someone to feud with. And sadly, he went from having a world title shot. He had a world title shot last week, and now he's feuding with a guy with a rabbit on Saturday night.
Hey, you know what? Everybody has a allergy. I don't know. I don't know where to go with that. Good job, WCW. That said, the next match, we get the Scott Norton Macho Man Randy Savage match. This is, of course, the one that was about to take place in Nitro last week when Scott Norton made his debut, signed a contract or whatever it is to fight Macho this week. Opens up with Mongo making a comment that he should have taken Norton out last week, which I had a problem with. Again, more me having an issue with Mongo, but you don't, as an announcer, you're not supposed to be the guy who can take on the talent, especially a guy that you're supposed to be billing as this monster. So I appreciate that Heenan basically shut him down and was like, no, you can't. You're not going to be able to take him out. So appreciate it.
Well, I think he also did that too, because I think at some point very, very soon Mongo starts wrestling. So I think Mongo is talking a little bit of smack, because I think he is slowly but surely going to get into the ring.
Well, eventually he gets in the ring, but I don't know how soon it is. I guess we'll have to wait and see there. Of course, Scott Norton billed as an arm wrestling champion. And that's about the lead-up we have for this match. Haddix, what was your thoughts on Scott Norton in his first debut match on Nitro?
I actually really like this match. I thought, not knowing any of these characters, I mean, obviously I know who Macho Man is, but I never really watched him wrestle. But not knowing either of these characters, I thought that they build it really well with Scott Norton being kind of this big guy, like big tough guy, and Macho Man couldn't really do much to him, but he kind of mounted the comeback there, and right when he, thought he was going to actually do something, Scott Norton kind of squashed it. But then, whoever those people were that ran, who were those people?
The Dungeon of Doom.
The Dungeon of
Doom. Yes.
Yeah, they ran out, and although it was a little bit cheesy on how they got him to pin Norton, I thought it was kind of cool how they wrote it in a way where he got the win by pinning him without actually pinning him, so it didn't take anything away from Norton, while still obviously making Macho Man win.
So what they do there, for those of you who may not have watched it yet, is basically they have Avalanche at the time, which at one point his name was Shark. He was Earthquake. He was Golga in WWF. He falls on Scott Norton's legs and holds Scott Norton down, so Norton can't get his legs from underneath this 500-pound man, and takes an elbow drop. Why the hell isn't the ref DQing somebody in this match? There's literally an interference taking place. It's an obvious interference, and the ref just lets it take place. Didn't understand that one at all myself, but I agree with you. At least it didn't totally bury Norton in a match where he probably shouldn't beat Macho Man in his debut.
Yeah.
That said, what are you rating this one, guys?
I think I'll give it a 3.5, 4, just because the finish wasn't the greatest, but I really enjoyed the match.
Wow, that's
I want to say
strong rating.
Your rating is that there's going to be better matches. It's hard. I will very rarely give a 3.5 or 4 to any match unless I think it's really, really good. I give this a 2.5 or 3, just because the ending was so weird. And once again, like I know I mentioned in the rundown, but Scott Norton, you're going to realize he sells nothing ever. And the fact that the first match he had on the show, Macho Man gave him a clothesline, almost like flipped him out of his shoes. I never thought I'd ever see that come from Scott Norton. Hell, Scott Norton didn't even sell the pin. He got pinned, and he actually kicked out of it. If you actually watch it, he actually kicks out of it. But at this point, the ref doesn't give a shit. This match is over, according to this ref. So you'll see a lot later that Norton definitely is a person that doesn't ever want to look like he gets squashed by anybody. So I'll say 2.5 to 3.
All right, I leave it at 2 myself. It just, I thought it was a weird ending, but, it was okay. I understand what they were doing with that. That said, we then move into our Hogan versus Lex Luger WCW Championship match. Before the match starts, they make an announcement that Macho Man is apparently now hurt from the Norton match. I guess they're just, again, trying to push that Norton was a little bit stronger, but Macho Man looked fine and took, one with a big elbow drop, so I don't know why he's hurt, but that's what they say. Haddix, this is your main event right here. This is the one you've been waiting for since last week. Why don't you break it down for me and tell me how you felt about this match?
So, I feel like the throughout Nitro was I could have not known any of these characters, obviously other than in name. I could have told you who was going to win every match. I mean, the announcers build up the guy that's going to win before the match starts, during the whole match. I mean, it's almost ridiculous. There's no surprises at all. So Luger comes out. They kind of both go back and forth because they're both baby faces, basically. So no one really wants to get over the other one. And the whole time Bischoff's talking about how they're down 3-4, which I didn't even know about this pay-per-view until the beginning of this Nitro, that apparently it's a Team Hogan against I don't know, what is it? Dungeon of Doom?
Dungeon of Doom. You'll get it eventually, my friend.
I keep wanting to say Legion of Doom, which is not right. So
you did in the rundown. I had to fix it so you wouldn't say it accidentally.
So anyway, I could have told you that Luger was going to be the fourth man. I mean, they're literally building it up the whole time. I feel like they're talking about that more than the match itself. And so basically, it's two big guys who their movesets aren't really that crazy going at it, although props to Luger for holding Hogan, who's a big cat. He's a big cat. And he held him in that torture rack for a while.
That is the longest torture rack I have ever seen.
Dude,
usually people
insane.
tap immediately in that thing, and he just held it forever.
I mean, and Hogan's not like a little guy. So, I mean, the whole time I was just like, God damn it, that dude is strong. He's just holding Hogan up there like crazy.
He's a total package. Flair called it out.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he's a total package. So, I mean, that was really kind of the whole fight was just both of them kind of throwing punches. Hawk did his hawking up thing, which reminded me of you, Kaiser. And then the Dungeon of Doom came in and interrupted. Well, then, Randy Savage came out and the Stinger came out. And again, could have called this whole thing. They get in a fight or banter,
a spat,
if you will. Yeah, no one was actually, fighting each other, but they were getting in an argument about if they should have Luger be the fourth guy, going back and forth. Again, could have called it coming down to Hogan being the deciding vote, which it was. And, brother, he decided to have Luger on his team, brother. And I feel like those four are by far the better team against Dungeon of Doom.
It's funny,
good God.
Four of the biggest stars,
Seriously.
if not the biggest stars in WCW, against four of the biggest jobbers of WCW.
How's that even?
That's your main event for Fall Brawl War Games. I don't understand it, but
I don't either. But basically,
sadly, I believe, not to go ahead, but I think Dungeon of Doom wins.
They don't, but that's we can talk about that next week. I actually watched the War Games following this because I was curious as well. But obviously the turmoil there is Luger part of the Dungeon of Doom? Is he not? Whose side is everybody on? And that's sort of your lead-in to the pay-per-view. So decent go-home show there. Overall, guys, what's your final thoughts on this Nitro overall, and as far as a lead-in to Fall Brawl?
As far as for me, I thought it was very similar to last week's, other than it wasn't in a mall. It's peaking up a little bit. I'm curious to see where the Hogan Luger thing goes, but other than that, I wasn't like overly impressed. But I didn't hate it either. I thought it was entertaining.
Better or worse than last week?
I think better than last week, but kind of in that same, not much better.
Okay, Kyle.
So obviously we're seeing that same fast-paced start that we're going to get used to seeing on this first match. You're also, though, I think you're going to start getting used to seeing a lot on TV, on both WCW and WWF, is a lot of non-clean wins or DQs, because you have to have the ultimate payoff at the pay-per-view. So people who have feuds that start wrestling on TV usually don't get solved on TV. So it makes for stale television, but it ups the pay-per-view revenue, because it makes people say, well, I want to see the payoff that's going to be on the pay-per-view. The last thing I was going to say was I'm very surprised they're not bashful on shitting on the WWF. That's episode 2, man. They're already doing it.
Yeah,
so
didn't take long.
It seemed like the first episode they were riding kind of a fine line where they were kind of maybe wanted to, but I think they wanted to just kind of put their foot in the water a little bit. That line's gone now. They're down with saying whatever they want. And also the roster wrestlers this week was kind of the same compared to last week. So it also kind of made for a somewhat stale card to see kind of the same people twice.
Yeah, all good points. I won't add much. As far as a go-home show, I think, they sold the story and replaced Vader as best they could. Kind of interesting to see what they're going to do with the headliners after the Fall Brawl, and they can kind of end this Dungeon of Doom or try to end this Dungeon of Doom storyline. And the last thing I'm going to add is good old Pepe back to close out the show. Again, I don't know where the fuck this dog was the rest of the show, but there he is. In some sort of costume. I'm getting him mixed up at this point. I think he might have had a cowboy hat on this time, or that could be another one I was watching.
I think it was cowboy hat, but then once again, I've watched a couple ahead, so it's hard to keep up with it.
So either way, he's there fear not, Pepe back at the end of the show, even though he wasn't there at the beginning. And that's going to be it for Nitro. And then now we can move into our Raw. All right, now, unfortunately, we had to lose Haddix on this one. That's, part of the downfall of having a child. Sometimes life gets in your way. But we're gonna man through it with just the two of us and finish in discussing the Raw, our first episode of Raw.
I consider Haddix like Mongo, so we're not going to miss him.
Yeah, there you go. We'll see if he has maybe he'll call you uncooked eggs next week and really dig deep into those wounds.
Ooh, that's going to hurt.
So they open up with a SummerSlam recap from 2 weeks prior to this episode of Raw. Shawn Michaels retains, I believe at the time, the Intercontinental title over Razor Ramon in a ladder match, repeat sort of sequel match to their WrestleMania ladder match. And then that set up for Psycho Sid versus Shawn Michaels tonight for the Intercontinental title, which they had kind of been setting up. Psycho Sid was going to wrestle the winner of that Intercontinental match. Then they also recapped that British Bulldog turned on Diesel, which is going to set up for Razor Ramon versus British Bulldog. Apparently Razor helping out his buddy Diesel. In case you're not sure, at this point the Clique is kind of a thing. I don't know if they're calling themselves the Clique yet or not, but they're all basically buddies. 1, 2, 3 Kid, Razor, Diesel, and Michaels.
It seems like the Clique was hardly ever mentioned on television. That was always like a backstage.
Yeah, I think eventually
name.
They start to refer to him a little bit, but they weren't like a quote unquote stable, just more like you and your Clique buddies, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But then Vince opens things up and brings it strong with some baseball puns. I don't have the exact term or wrote it down with the quote, I should say. But he says something about Raw's first pitch of the new season and something about Cal Ripken Jr. hitting it out of the park or something like that. And they keep stressing that it's the new season of Raw, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then
I think they did that a lot when the U.S. Open was going on USA.
It was a good time for them to
because it was such a
restart.
pause that
yeah. But for me, then they opened it up with the new theme song, "I Like It Raw," and it's not really a rock song, but it's kind of a jazzy rock country song or something. And they have it playing with clips of wrestlers kind of wrestling on like a rooftop or something like that, and then there's scenes of like cops running through the city. It felt like that 90s cop show kind of opening. It felt like that to me. It was unbelievably corny. I hated it. What was your thoughts on that? I Like It Raw.
It reminded me. It was like Cops meets Scrap Junkyard with a ring. Like it was all over the place for most of this show, especially for the video production. Anything that involves Vince in it is actually really good. This is just garbly.
This is not it.
This is
the gobbledygooker of the promos for them.
Absolutely.
So let's just get into the new fall season. Of course, it opens up on commentary. You've got Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler. For me, pretty good tandem here. Vince is always a pretty solid lead man, with the exception of he always says "what a maneuver" because he doesn't know how to call moves at all. But he's a decent lead play-by-play guy, with the exception of actually knowing the play-by-play.
And you'll notice too, there are a couple of moves that he likes to really like back body drop.
Yeah.
Like he'll do things like that where he just gargles like salt water. But did you also notice that it seemed like they weren't actually there? Like they're definitely in studio.
It's
a green
studio
screen
kind of thing, yeah. And King, actually at one point, and I don't know if it's again. I don't have notes in front of me what it happens. It might be this episode. It might be the next one because you and I both watched the next weeks as well. But there's at one point where they show the commentary team, and it's Vince sitting there with two people next to him with headsets on, neither of which are King. So I do think it's dubbed over later, but Vince was actually there for the commentary in some aspect. But I do think they re-record over in a studio. What did you think about King here? I think he's that typical 90s heel commentator where he tries to make some jokes that might be a little off-putting. but he's really digging in that he's the heel guy.
He's fine. There are some points where I'm like, dude, shut up. But
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. But I think overall, this is the Lawler I liked. You know, like towards the end where he actually was doing more of the face stuff. Because I think he went from being the heel commentator to being like just straight up just color commentating no matter what. Or he was always like the brown noser of Vince. Or if there was like titties on the screen, you know, that's when he was excitable. And then later on, when he became like a face, then he became a little bit more bland. I like heel commentator Jerry. I just don't like him when we talk about it later when he just talks over everything.
Yes, I agree, and that'll come up here in a minute. That said, we've got a different set here with Raw. They basically have the words Raw on the stage, and then they have like 9 video monitors in the middle that kind of create one big image. Definitely seems a lot lower budget in general between the arena and the set for me. Nitro has the pyros, the fire. They have this big stainless steel structures and stuff. Really seems
they got Ted Turner, so
well,
that's
they do. They have the money,
sense.
But you can definitely see Raw feels to me like the low budget of the two right now. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They used 9 screens, a lot of black, backdrop curtains, and overall, just there was really nothing about it. There was no real entranceway. It was just them going through a curtain. They take a 90-degree angle to the ring. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the 90-degree angle to the ring, the first people to do that going to be Razor Ramon and the British Bulldog. And they open up again with the recap from SummerSlam of Razor Ramon and Dean Douglas. Of course, this is Shane Douglas's stint in the WWF under the Dean Douglas character. They kind of get into it as Dean Douglas basically called Razor out after his match, after his loss against Shawn Michaels. Then we get into the match. Hoagie, I'm going to let you discuss this as Razor is one of your favorites of all time.
Oh, he is my favorite of all time. And you can tell, too, that there are certain people on the roster that get their own, like, theme, or not so much their own theme, but they get their own, like, that backdrop, that like a graphic on those 9 screens. So Razor gets one, and Davey Boy does not. So that I felt kind of bad for him. He had absolutely nothing. He just went down the ring with James E. Cornette, and that's it. And one thing I always missed was every time he took off all of his gold, he would hand it to one of the ring helpers, and he would point at them and threaten them, even though he's barely even on camera doing it, but he does it because he's always in character. And I've always loved it. Yeah. I did laugh a bit. There was some subtle USA chants, which was just kind of a weird thing, because I think at this point Razor Ramon was supposed to be kind of a Cuban guy living in Miami, I think. But right. Yeah, because he was supposed to be a Scarface character.
There's plenty of times that the wrestling fans, even in today's product, will chant USA, and it's like 2 foreigners wrestling, and it's the dumbest thing in the world.
Right. Or unless they're chanting because that's the channel you're watching. Like, everyone's like, yeah, USA. But I did laugh when Razor tried to pull Davey Boy's crew cut hair. That was pretty funny. And then
King actually, there's even a comment. Vince says something about him grabbing the hair. King says it, and the other one makes a joke about it. Right.
Yeah, I did notice that as well. You even saw this too when we were discussing this earlier. Man, couldn't they at least pay like a couple of attractive families some extra money to sit at the freaking front row?
Oh my gosh, these were some bad people, and I laughed because they said something about King makes a comment about Pooper Scooper because Bulldog being a dog. And Vince is like, where's the Pooper Scooper? And at that moment, they had just cut to some poor middle-aged, non-attractive woman in the crowd. And he goes, right there's the Pooper Scooper.
Oh, my God.
Classic heel work.
Yeah, classic heel work. I felt bad, but I'm like, God, is that what everybody in the 90s looked like? Like just baggy shirts and just frizzy hair. It looked like late 80s, but it was like 95, and no one had made the transition yet.
Right.
But as far as the match is actually concerned, the match it is what it is. It was a decent work. They're both good. They're both good hands. They're both good wrestlers. The ref gets shoved lightly. He goes into a 2-minute coma. Dean Douglas takes that opportunity to come in there and hit Razor, I think, in the back of the head with his knee from the top rope. 1, 2, 3 Kid comes in and tries to help out, but he fucks it up. Dean takes him out too, which I thought was kind of surprising that they're really making Dean look like a really strong character. 1, 2, 3 Kid then finally does get a chance to try and help. He accidentally splashes on Razor, and he hits Razor Ramon, and yet Razor gets DQ'd, which I thought was kind of funny.
That's some of that weird booking that happens.
So British Bulldog wins, even though 1, 2, 3 Kid hit Razor. Whatever. That was, I guess, the way it was going to be. And like we already mentioned before on the Nitro overall, you're going to see this a lot. You're going to see a lot of non-finishes
all build-ups for
TV.
Future stories and next week's shows and ultimately pay-per-view.
Because ultimately they make a decision on, does this match really matter who wins or loses? If the answer is no, then you usually don't have a definitive winner. So I
agree.
No one cares who won between Razor or Bulldog. Nobody wants to look bad, though, on TV. So this is the perfect way to do it.
That said, what's your rating?
I mean, it's a 2. I mean, it's like I think 2 is the safe. Like, what it is, what it is.
Right.
I didn't get much out of it, but no one fucked up a lot. It wasn't like horribly. The booking, the ending was fine. The ending was fine. That's the thing. So I actually would give it a 2.5 because the ending actually does have a means.
For you. Okay.
Right, so 2.5.
For me, it's a 2-star match. I want to add one small thing, and I think this might have been the best part of the match, and it was so subtle. It was one of those things that it may not have even got on TV, but it did, and if you just noticed out of the corner of the screen, it was phenomenal. When Dean Douglas comes in and drops, I think he's dropping the elbow or when he's splashing or whatever it is, when he comes into the ring, Cornette, the ref is knocked out at this point. Cornette takes his tennis racket, his gimmick tennis racket, and holds it just over the ref's head. So typically in matches when the ref's like knocked out, but like you're like, if any common idiot would see that this interference is happening, but the ref's not supposed to know it's happening. Cornette blocks his view with the racket. It's so subtle and so out of
genius.
It's beautiful. It's really a beautiful manager move, and I just give Corny all credit right there because I thought it was a phenomenal move.
Yeah, for the record, outside of Bobby the Brain Heenan, he is the best manager of all time.
Really one of the best, absolutely. I think an underrated one because I think I don't know, people don't talk about him as much as he deserves to be.
It's hard to remember. It's hard to remember him. Yeah. But when the things that he's good at, he's amazing at.
Oh, yeah. So that's all I want to add to that, but 2-star match for me. After the match, we get Vince in the ring to speak with Razor and 1, 2, 3 Kid as they're kind of going to be setting up a match. I don't really need to talk too much about this promo unless you do, Kyle, but for me, the biggest thing is Jerry the King Lawler is talking over it the whole time, and it was fucking irritating.
Yeah, it absolutely was. The only other thing I wanted to mention was, my God, Sean Waldman looked like a young, long-haired David Schwimmer. Every time I looked at his face, I'm like, "Oh my God, you need
young there." Oh my gosh,
I think he's like 19 years old or something like that. He was a young kid during that time. But yeah, there's really not much to talk about. The kid kind of mentions that Razor kind of did something similar and cost him a match a couple weeks back, and so whether or not he messed up or not, he didn't care because in the end, if anything, he's even because of what Razor did, and then feels like he never gets respect with Razor, so he challenges to a match next week.
Yep. And it's really hard. It's very distracting with King talking over, but that's the ultimate ending of this promo is there is a match set for next week. That said, they also then cut to a promo for Owen Hart and Yokozuna, who are the tag champs. They were going to wrestle Men on a Mission next week on Raw, so a little promo for that. Hoagie, which I just want to add, we talked about it already, but you made a comment that Raw's promos are much better than Nitro's, and I'd have to agree that they definitely killed it in the promo department.
And it's easy to do that just because they pre-produce those things. That there is production value.
Yeah,
all the
absolutely.
promos on Nitro is Eric Bischoff talking off a piece of paper live on Nitro.
Fair point.
Definitely, I mean, it's not fair to compare them really, but you still got to point it out when you see it.
Absolutely. That said, we've got the Smoking Guns versus Rad Radford and the Brooklyn Brawler. Obvious squash match here for the Smoking Guns. We're not going to spend too much time talking on this one. Biggest things here, I want to add Haddock's notes since he's not here. He, of course, knows Billy Gunn is Badass Billy Gunn from the New Age Outlaws. He has to laugh at the fact that he's got a mustache here and he's got the mullet. Definitely an entertaining look for Billy Gunn. for me, it's a typical squash match. I think they have the Smoking Guns are the obvious tag team here, and they win pretty easily. I think it just makes them, there's a lot of these squash matches on Raw, especially where they, enhancement matches, if you will. Not much for me to add to this one, Kyle. Anything else you want to put here before we move on from this one?
And I think that's the one advantage that I think that Nitro has. Nitro usually does not have these kinds of matches where it's like big name guy versus a guy I've never heard of. But you do that a lot here. These are enhancement matches, like you said, and the Smoking Guns, they just recently lost the straps to Yoko and Owen Hart. So obviously they got to come back in here. I had no idea who Brad Radford was until I Wikipedia'd him. Fun fact: he actually dies by choking on his own vomit 3 years later. So rest in peace. We have our first. So now we're continuing. This is episode 2. We still have a dead guy on the card. So let's see if this continues to go.
I'm sure that'll be a theme for most of these. That said, match rating for me, I'll give it a half star. It's a typical squash match.
Well, I said a half star to me is if the match is bad. So to me, this is a 1 star, which basically just it's all one sided. It was meant to enhance and make the Smoking Guns look good. No one really screwed up on their spots. It's a 1 star.
Okay. Then we have a Goldust promo. This is exciting because Goldust is actually not debuted yet, so they're doing a lot of these vignettes leading up. Which again, I loved this era of wrestling with the vignettes. And Goldust, of course, one of the best at the vignettes, in my opinion. And he talks about Night of the Living Dead. He kind of mentions The Undertaker, so I don't know if that means he's going to eventually debut against The Undertaker. I feel like that doesn't happen, but it's worth mentioning. And that's about all I've got there. Anything you want to add about the Goldust promo?
I don't think he debuts against The Undertaker, but I think that is like the first person on his radar. Like if he were like his first pay-per-view match might be with The Undertaker. Okay. And then they'll have something that builds up to it. Once again, I don't know. I haven't gone that far ahead, sure. But I highly doubt that they're going to set him up with The Undertaker just because I don't see Undertaker losing that match.
Right. I agree. Next match here, we got Isaac Yankem DDS versus Scott Taylor. This is basically Isaac Yankem, of course, for those of you who don't know, this is Glenn Jacobs or Kane in his early years. He plays Jerry Lawler's dentist. He's an evil dentist. He's got jacked up teeth. And basically that's it. He wrestled Bret Hart at SummerSlam, and Lawler helped interfere and caused a DQ there. And he's just squashing Scott Taylor, who might not mean anything to you, but that is actually Scotty 2 Hotty of the Attitude Era fame. And it is what it is. It's a squash match. They need Isaac to win his first match because he got DQ'd in the previous one, so he squashes him. I think, Hoagie, you made the comment that his finisher is a DDT, but he calls it the DDS. That's about as lame as it comes. 1 star. If we're going to give squash matches stars, I'll give it a 1-star match, and that's all I've got.
I almost want to say this is actually almost a half star, just because Sky 2 High didn't even throw a punch. He had no offense. Not even like a dodge, not even like a drop kick. Maybe go to the top rope and try to put some sort of offensive. I felt bad because that did not help Scott Taylor at all. And
does Scott Taylor need help?
No, I'm not saying that. Like, he doesn't deserve it. But also, he did not look recognizable in comparison to Sky 2 Hotty. I looked at that and was like, that's Sky 2 Hotty. But then I look at him like, that looks nothing like. I mean, he had a mustache. He got his hair cut. Looked way different. The other thing too that people are going to start realizing is if the person is already in the ring without music and he's just waiting in the ring for the guy to come in, you're fucked. You're not winning that match. There's no way that they're going to give a win to a guy who didn't even get to go down, didn't even get to walk down the hallway, or not the hallway, down the ramp and down the aisle to a match. And also, did you also notice that Kane's music, I'm going to call him Kane because fuck it, is literally just a drill. No music, it's just the drill.
There's a lot of bad music here, and that's where it starts. But trust me, Kane's music being a drill is not why Isaac Yankem DDS did not work. Just be glad that eventually he comes out as Kane, because it's a hell of a lot better.
Well, sadly, he actually became the next Diesel next.
Oh, yeah. He was the fake Diesel for a minute.
He was the fake Diesel.
Yeah.
Yep.
After that match, we've got the Todd Pettengill In Your House promo. Todd Pettengill is your classic 90s radio disc jockey, isn't he? He makes a comment. For me, my favorite part is he made a comment about Mad About You moving to Sunday nights. That was just funny because I enjoy topical references in these shows because it kind of gives me a feeling for what era we're watching. Big thing here, he promotes it's your third In Your House pay-per-view, which is kind of not really a full pay-per-view. It's like a 2-hour special they run that you pay. So it is a pay-per-view, but it's not
It's called those In Your Houses, which really all of the pay-per-views back in the day were In Your Houses except for the major 4.
Right. The big one here, they're going to have a big triple header match where all the titles on the line. If Diesel or Michaels get pinned, they lose their title to Owen or Yoko. And if Owen or Yoko get pinned, then Diesel and Shawn are the tag champs. They also have Dean Douglas versus Razor Ramon, Bret Hart versus Jean-Pierre Lafitte, Bam Bam Bigelow versus the British Bulldog, and Savio Vega versus Waylon Mercy. Heck of a card. Can't wait to see what happens there.
By the way, the card is not in that order. Waylon Mercy is not headlining.
No, he is not. But that is the order that Pettengill decides to promote it. So it is what it is. I kind of like Todd Pettengill myself, but he's hard. When I first started listening to him, he was kind of cringy. I was kind of like, dude.
He is, but I don't know. I've got a special place in my heart for Todd.
By the way, Waylon Mercy is actually, I didn't know this. That's Eugene Spivey or Dan Spivey. I did not know that. I don't know if you don't know who that is, but that's also Starship Eagle, some other guys. But
okay, no, I didn't.
But yeah, okay, just the thing. He was whatever. He's not anything that crazy awesome, but
good to know. And then finally, we got our main event match, the Intercontinental Championship, Shawn Michaels versus Psycho Sid. It opens up with a nice promo for Shawn Michaels. You can own his chauffeur hat and heart-shaped sunglasses for $25. And then they cut again to the pooper scooper in the crowd. So I'm really appreciating all the airtime she's getting. She may have gotten more airtime than Scott Taylor at this point.
She got more airtime, I think, than Diesel did.
Yeah, there you have it. For me, this match was actually pretty good. I thought for a Sid match, I was entertained. And I think Sid's an awful wrestler. For me, it just goes to show you that Shawn Michaels can pretty much turn can polish a turd and actually make it worth something. At one point during the title match, you mentioned it too, Kyle. I thought the same thing. Sid knocks Michaels to the outside, and Michaels is like at a 9 count before he gets back in the ring, and Sid's like celebrating in the ring. I'm sorry, if you're a heel trying to win the title, you don't go for the count out. From a ring psychology, and that point, that made no sense to me. That said, eventually HBK does win, and he like kind of throws Sid off the ropes, and then half kicks him, and then half like super kicks him again. It was like 2 super kicks, maybe a third mid kick in between there.
Yeah, there was like a kick to the midsection, so he bent down, then did a super kick that was not flush at all, and then he hit a second super kick that also was kind of weird, and I don't think really hit anything. Right.
And then he wins from there. Bischoff, of course, made a comment that Shawn Michaels beat the big guy with a kick that Greenbelt couldn't win in a local YMCA. I gotta admit, he was right. This was a really bad kick, bad finish, very sloppy. Could be Sid's fault on this one. For me, this is a 2.5-star match, and I think I'm being friendly with that, just because I was impressed by a Sid match being semi-entertaining.
I mean, I think my problem with this match, and I think the match overall quality, I'll say sure 2.5. But did anybody really think that even if you watched Nitro and you already got the endings messed up or ruined already, but you're going into a pay-per-view where you are tag teaming with Diesel for all the belts. You're not going to lose the belt right before that. You're not going to
dumb booking there.
It's bad booking. You're not going to have an IC match where you really think that Shawn was in any way, shape, or form going to lose, and it was kind of a waste of time regardless.
Agreed. So that was the show. Doc Hendricks does interview HBK and Diesel to kind of do one more final promo before In Your House. HBK does 90% of the talking. Diesel ends with a quote about being 2 dudes with attitude and all the chaps with the straps, or the straps with all the the chaps with all the straps.
The two chaps with all the straps.
Yeah. Thought it was. I think it was a good call there. Sean, obviously the best on the mic right now. Diesel or Nash, still learning. Thought it was decent way for them to close things out.
He's charismatic enough. Like he had two cool, memorable lines. He was like, "Oh, people call us the two dudes with attitudes, but come next after Sunday will be the two chaps with all the straps." I kind of like that, and he kind of had like a cool, smile. He was fine. He peaked, so right. He was good.
Yeah, absolutely. Final thoughts, Kyle, on Raw as a whole.
I'm kind of bummed that they didn't showcase the champion at all, like the WWF champion. I mean, yeah, Diesel was there in the back for that part of the show, but because I think it's really what's kind of showing is that the IC champion is the real face of the WWF.
Michael's your star at this point, yeah, absolutely.
And WCW know where the draw is, so and that's Hogan. You're also starting to see a little bit of the clicks. Exposure and kind of influence in the back. They kind of got 3/4 of the whole show to themselves as far as TV time goes.
Yeah. So I think they're also probably some of the biggest money drawers on the. Well,
it also helps that they're able to get their convince. If they're able to convince McMahon that, then they're going to get more TV time anyways. I like Vince as a commentator. I think he actually always did a decent job of it. I mean, there are some things where I think he goes from being like totally like, oh my God, back body drop. Then they'd be like 1, 2, well, nope, just 2, nope, just 2. And he kind of just like, the switch turns off. He's either at like 2 or a 12 and never can really find that middle ground to tell a story. But once again, it makes sense to have the guy that knows all the story tell the story because it's his fucking story. So him being on the commentator, that he's not going to screw it up. Because right now, what he's doing now is that he's on a headset in the back as Michael Cole and everybody else is telling the story, and he's probably chirping in their ears all night long,
right,
and yelling at them about, hey, say this like this, or hey, you missed this part. So Vince has always got his hand on the pulse of things. So it made sense for the beginning for him to be the commentator before he became Mr. McMahon. But here's the thing: he had to be exciting because the matches were kind of meh at best. Nitro so far has had the better quality wrestling overall. I think that once again, though, those are veteran guys, the faster pace. I think the quality of the matches are better, but WWF has the better vignettes and promos. So so maybe the story is being told better in the WWF. The ring work right now, I would give that slight edge to WCW right now.
I think I agree with you there. Haddock's, I read his notes here. He actually thought the wrestling announcing and promos were a lot better on Raw as opposed to Nitro. I think some of that is his personal bias towards
his rose-tinted glasses that he still has on.
We'll see. We'll have to get his opinion next time on the next Nitro and Raw. But ultimately, who won the week for you, Kyle? Was this Nitro or was this Raw?
I think if they were actually going at each other to see who would win, I say Nitro does by too. Just a little bit.
It's not far enough in Nitro's favor. But for me, I think Nitro had, to your point, the better matches, and I think they had the better lead up for the next show. At this point, Razor and Kid interest me a little bit. They had the two main wrestlers. They had the two main champions on Nitro in action. That to me already tells me it's going to be a better card. And for me, I think my match of the week was Alex Wright and Sabu. I think it was a great match. I think it was my favorite of both shows. And that's why I'm giving it to Nitro this week.
Yep, I agree. I think that was probably the best overall quality match.
That said, Nielsen ratings for Raw and for Raw was a 2.5. Nitro was a 2.4. So Raw did edge him out in the ratings, which is a little surprising given that Nitro had that hot start the week before.
I'm not surprised because Raw was off for 2 weeks. You got to remember that. So I think people were also excited for the show to come back.
For the new season of Raw. That's very possible, too. And they did have that Intercontinental title match to headline it. Whether you like Sid or not, I think he was a big deal back then. So a lot going for it. They did edge him out, but it's very close. And I think that says a lot for Nitro that, hey, you know what? Raw's been, killing it by itself for so long. guess what? We about matched it on our first head-to-head week. So good for them, and good for us, because that's going to be our show this week. We are now on iTunes. You can follow us there. Google Play. You can follow us on all of our social media accounts, at Monday Night Tour on Twitter, Monday Night Tours on Facebook.
Note the S.
Note the
and the
S
lack of
on-
S.
Yeah, Twitter had a, character limit. What can I say? But, search Monday Night Tour, and you can pretty much on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, you can find us all there. Of course, give us a like and a subscribe on iTunes or Google Play. Leave us some feedback. Get us up there. We really appreciate it. Hey, and you know what? If Eric Bischoff can retweet us, you can retweet us. All right? Vince,
And also find us also on MondayNightTours.com.
There you go. And I wish I have all that there as well. And, go check out the September 18th, 1995 Raw Nitros, because we will be back next week to break those down as well. For Josh Haddix, for Kyle Hogan, I am Josh Kaiser, and we will see you guys next time on the Monday Night Tours.
Have a good Tuesday. See you later.